Hello and welcome to the Metapod Podcast, the Pokemon podcast that revolves around the evolving meta. And if you did not listen into last week's episode, which you should, by the way, if you haven't, in the interview with Ethan, Heggie, Sean, currently right now, my co-host Gyro Sean, he's currently in Japan, doing like a little vacation in Japan. And, you know, when you do visit another country, you know, you kind of tour around, you know, you go into a couple different places. And Sean right now does not have very good internet at all. It's terrible internet right now. Unfortunately, he couldn't join me for this cast, which is okay because I'm a big boy. I'm a big Pokemon trading card game player. I can handle this on my own. So unfortunately, it'll just be me today instead of with my co-host Sean, but we're still going to have a great podcast episode, whether you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, Apple, whatever you listen through. Thank you so much for listening as well. We've got Pokemon TCG news around the whole idea of the Pokemon trading card game. You know, we got product news. We've got free stuff news as well. New free stuff, not just the free stuff that you know was free earlier and is still free now, but new free things that are on the horizons, as well as maybe some tips, tricks, and some of the most meta decks right now in the opening weeks of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. And so with that, in the Pokemon trading card game, a lot of times, as we do here on the Metapod Podcast, we like to talk about a review or a question or something at the beginning of the cast. And so this one's going to be a little bit different. This is a comment that was left on one of our YouTube videos from Dat Keys. Dat Keys says, any tips on getting the most out of the Arcanine EX deck? What would you guys add to make it more competitive? Now, I personally, because I've been playing the Pokemon trading card game live, for anyone who's listening, I've migrated my PTCGO account and I've started playing live. Unfortunately, I've already deleted all of the like pre-made decks. Pokemon Trading Card Game Live is great, especially for beginning players, because it gives you a lot of pre-made decks and it gives you a lot of great cards as well, just for free for downloading the game. So the Arcanine EX deck is not in my library, but I still own the cards. So if anyone doesn't know about Arcanine EX, let me just tell you a little bit about it first, because this will be important information to give you later. So Arcanine EX, a 280 HP fire Pokemon. It is a stage 1, so you have to evolve this from Growlithe. Now, it's got some attacks on here. There are 2 attacks. The first one for 2 fire energy. It's called Raging Claws. It does 30 plus. This attack does 10 more damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. So if it's got 20 damage on it, maybe you use Gape Jog Bog the Stadium and you put the Growlithe from your hand and then evolve it. It's got 20 damage on it. It is going to do 50 total, right? Because the 30 base damage plus 20 more for the damage counters that were placed on it. So with a HP status of 280 HP, you can effectively get an extra 270 damage on this Arcanine EX. If you had 27 damage counters on it for 270 damage out of your 280 HP to have 10 HP left, you will do 300 damage for this 2 energy attack Raging Claws. It also has a second attack that's pretty powerful in itself. For 3 fire energies, it can do Bright Flame, 250 damage. Discard 2 fire energy from this Pokemon. Now, there's a couple different things that you can do in this with Arcanine EX. And if I had to take a guess, one of the big trainers that is in this deck is a stadium card. It's called Magma Basin. So Magma Basin, if you do not know, this is a very, very important card. Listen closely. This stadium card says once during each player's turn, that player may attach a fire energy card from their discard pile to one of their benched fire Pokemon. If a player attached energy to a Pokemon in this way, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. So, like I was saying with Arcanine, you can put an energy on this Arcanine, right, to power up either for Raging Claws or Bright Flame, as well as putting out the extra damage that Raging Claws does. So you can build up your attack essentially through that situation. Now, there's a couple different things as well that can be a part of this Arcanine that I think could be pretty interesting, I will say. One of them is a supporter, and as I was browsing through the current supporters in the standard format, I came across this Kindler, a card that we don't really see in the Pokemon trading card game. Now, with your whatchamacallit, your magma basin, you're going to have to get the fire energies in the discard pile, right? So one of the ways that you can do that is with Kindler. You can use this card only if you discard a fire energy card from your hand. If you do that, right, you discard a fire energy from your hand to use this effect. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck and put up to 2 of them in your hand. Shuffle the other cards back in your deck. Now think about this. If you are a deck that needs to put fire energies in the discard, think about how good Professor's Research is. Professor's Research, you will see this in most decks in the standard format. It is a staple trainer as well in the Pokemon trading card game. It is at this point, in the last year or so, it has always been a supporter that you can play, constantly getting different reprints. You'll see in here, there's the Juniper version in here. There's the Magnolia Research from Sword and Shield base set and a bunch of other iterations, and it will constantly keep going on. So this research says discard your hand and draw 7 cards. Now, the research is better, and I think you should put this card in the deck, but think about it with Kindler, right? You get to see the amount of cards in that, and maybe with Kindler, right, you don't want all the other cards in your hand. Maybe you just want a couple of them. You just want to look at a couple in there. So Kindler could be a good idea for you to not only draw more cards, right, get what you need, but also be discarding that fire energy. But like I said as well, make sure to please put research in your deck. One of the other cards that you should put in is Raihan. I don't know if Raihan is something that's in the original decks, but Raihan, you can play this card only if any of your Pokemon were knocked out during your opponent's last turn. So let's say at the beginning of the game you had a poor little Rowlet in the active, right, and you were able to get some fire energies in the discard through like Ultra Ball or something like that. You use an Ultra Ball to get another Growlithe in play. Raihan will allow you, if that Growlithe gets knocked out and you put in a new one in the active, it'll put a fire energy from the discard pile, if there's one in there. It'll put a fire energy from the discard pile onto one of your Pokemon. Just one of your Pokemon on the field of your choice. But here's the coolest part about Raihan. Not only does it accelerate that energy, if you do attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to your Pokemon, you get to search for any card in your deck, and put it in your hand. Very, very powerful card. Very, very cool card as well. Another way you can get energies in the discard pile is through Serena. You can discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and if you do, draw cards until you have 5 in your hand, so you can effectively draw cards as well. So, somewhat like Kindler, but a little bit different, and you can discard multiple fire energies from your hand if you want to. And Serena is also great because it also has a second effect that you can choose instead. Maybe it's late game, you've already got all the fire energies you need in the discard, but so instead you can choose switch one of your opponent's Pokemon benched V with their active Pokemon. So, if you've got if you've got a Arcanine EX with 3 energies on it, right, you can do that 250 damage onto the Arcanine V. You can bring up something like the Miraidon or I'm sorry, not the Miraidon, a Regieleki V, right? Because Miraidon EX Regieleki VMAX is a very popular deck right now. Lugia V-Star, they got a bench Luminion, right, or something, and you can bring that up and knock it out and take maybe the rest of your prizes or something like that. A way to consistently get prize cards. So there's a lot of cool options in here in these lists about what you can utilize in terms of Pokemon and trainers. I would also recommend doing Bibarel. We've talked about Bibarel a lot on this podcast. This is a very, very good card, and a card that I really, really like, especially if you're doing stuff like Kindler, especially if you're doing stuff like Serena, potentially discarding those cards, the fire energies specifically, to be able to use them through Magma Basin, Raihans, etc., etc. You can use Bibarel, the stage 1 Pokemon, to use Industrious Incisors. This is a great draw supporter, or a great support Pokemon, I should say. With the ability, once during your turn, you may draw cards until you have 5 cards in your hand. So it can help you, you know, when you shrink your hand down using Ultra Ball or something like that. You can use Industrious Incisors to draw more cards. Another cool combo that I was thinking about as well that you can use is you can use this Gengar, right? Maybe for your Ultra Balls or your Serenas, you don't have a lot of fire energies as of right now. Maybe you have Gengars in your hand. Well, if you discard that Gengar, right, you can use Netherworld Gate. Once during your turn, this ability says that if the Pokemon is in the discard pile, you may put it onto your bench. If you do, put 3 damage counters on this Pokemon. This card is a really cool combo as well with, I believe it's called Damage Pump. Hold on, I have to turn off the filters on my Pokemon trading card game live. Damage Pump. This is an item card that allows you to move up to 2 damage counters from one of your Pokemon to your other Pokemon in any way you'd like. So you'll be able to get the damage counters off the Gengar and move them to like the Arcanine EX if you want to use the attack Raging Claws that is boosted because of the damage counters. So those are cool things you can do as well. I also recommend, in terms of a draw supporter, using Greninja, Radiant Greninja, I will say, because Radiant Greninja 5 times fast, everybody. Radiant Greninja discards an energy and you draw 2 cards for your turn. This is a great Pokemon to be able to draw more cards, essentially see more of your deck. So I recommend maybe that support Pokemon as well. But that's enough of Pokemon Trading Card Game Live, because you know what? It's there. And honestly, try out different ideas you may have as well. The thing about the Pokemon Trading Card Game is the more you try things out, the more ideas that you have. Even if the card is like, whoa, you know, I don't know if this will be good. This might be good. It could just be a good one of, right? It doesn't have to be 4 of in your deck. It can just be a 1. So there's a little tip and trick for you. Just try anything that comes to mind. Take it to your local leagues, things like that as well. But maybe if you're a little bit too intimidated to build your own deck, right? Because that is intimidating for a new player. I don't really even build my own decks. I just copy like winning decks and things like that and just practice that way and play that way. And that's an okay way to play. If you want to just grab a deck that's kind of made for you, but you want to try out, you know, more beginner-friendly things and not just jump into the fray right away, let me tell you about the new EX Battle decks that are coming out. Now, if you do not know what an EX Battle deck is, it's basically like a theme deck, starter deck type deal. It is a pre-made deck that they give out, you know, a couple per set. With like some of the new cards and things like that, and it allows people to just buy them, you know, shuffle them up and play other people. And it's really, really cool. I love these battle decks. They've been doing awesome with the battle decks as of late, so I highly recommend. We've learned that the new battle decks for Paldea Evolved, these battle decks will be releasing on July 7th. They will be featuring Tinkaton EX or Chine Pow EX. So what we assume is that there will be one Tinkaton EX deck and one Chine Pow EX deck that will be released and on sale. They'll cost $10 each USD, which in my opinion is a pretty good price for a pre-made deck that you can play, because the Pokemon trading card game, playing a deck, even though Pokemon is relatively cheap compared to other card games, that in my opinion is a really, really good price to just practice, have fun, you know, with your friends. With these cards, though, one of the things that PokeBeach, where I'm getting this article from, says about the Paldea Evolved EX battle decks is that usually, like in Scarlet and Violet in the base set, the battle decks were Lucario EX and Ampharos EX. They were cut from the set. So if you want the Chinpao EX card or the Tinkaton EX card, I know that Tinkaton is a fan favorite for a lot of people. You're going to have to get it as part of these decks, but who knows, maybe we'll see the illustration rares that were revealed. Maybe those will be in the main set Paldea Evolved, and who knows, maybe we even get other alternate arts that are not a part of it. But maybe you just want to hear what the cards are first before you buy into the battle decks. Let me tell you about them real quick. These are cards that are coming from the Japanese sets Snow Hazard and Clayburst. Those sets are basically combining with a little bit more to be part of Paldea Evolved, the rest of the world set. Chinpao EX is a water basic Pokemon with 220 HP. It has an ability called Trembling Cold. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may search your deck for up to 2 basic water energy. You can reveal them, or I mean, you have to reveal them and then put them in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So Chinpao can be great in terms of a card that synergizes well with something like Melanie, right? If you grab those water energies from your deck and use them on like an Ultra Ball or something like that, we know that in Palkia decks and stuff, Capacious Bucket was really, really good in Palkia decks. You can also use this with like Radiant Greninja or something like that to discard those energies. It allows you to draw cards. It allows you to accelerate energies. And so that can be a really good setup Pokemon in terms of getting those out and building up your board state. It has an attack for 2 water energies called Hail Blizzard. This Chinpao's attack, Hail Blizzard, does 60 times damage. So what that means 60 times is it is the attack amount, the damage amount is just a multiple of 60. So discard any amount of water energy from your Pokemon. This attack does 60 damage for each card you discarded in this way. So when you have something like Palkia, right? Palkia V-Star has that V-Star power that accelerates 3 energies from the discard pile onto your Pokemon. You have that plus Melanie, right, and an attachment for turn. That's 5 energies in a single turn that you can accelerate onto your Pokemon, which 5 times 60, if you were to discard all of them, would be 300 damage, knocking out almost everything in the format. If you had a choice belt on this Chinpao as well, that would be 330 damage on your opponent's Pokemon, which would, I think, knock out everything. I think it knocks out Duraludon as well. So it can be a really, really interesting card that comes out for a little bit, especially with the cards that we have around it with Palkia and things like that. So I'm excited to see this. I know that Kyurem as well, Kyurem VMAX with the energy accelerant ability. Some people are very interested in that as well. I saw the other day, I don't know if anybody saw us tweet this on Twitter. I saw a, gosh, what was it? It was a 31 energy deck. Yeah, you heard me right. 31 energies. Yeah, it's a Kyurem VMAX deck with the Greninja and the Kyogre from Celebrations and stuff. 4 VIP passes, 4 Iridas, 4 Adventures Discovery, and 31 energies. Absolutely absurd deck. So who knows? Maybe get some Melanies in there. Maybe Chine Pao, I forget how to say its name, will be part of this deck as well. It's crazy the things that you can do in the Pokemon trading card game. But it's weak to metal, so who knows? Maybe a metal Pokemon will come back into it. And this next Pokemon that we're going to talk about as well, Tinkaton EX, the other battle deck, is also weak to metal. But this one, a 300 HP Psychic EX Pokemon, is a stage 2. It evolves from Tinkatuff, and then Tinkatuff evolves from Tinkatink. The Tinkaton EX has 2 attacks on it. 2 colorless energies, can do Humongous Hammer, which is 30 times damage. This attack does 30 damage times the number of cards in your hand. So if you do a research, right? You do a research and you don't do anything else with your hand and use Humongous Hammer, that is 210 damage for just a double colorless. And with the double colorless single attach that you can do, that can get you a lot of damage. I expect Tinkaton maybe to be utilized in something like Gardevoir EX, right? Because Gardevoir EX, you can get some really big hands with those Curlias using the ability, I can't remember what it is, discard a card, draw 2. That ability, Tinkaton may be a neat little one-of that you can include a 1/1/1 line to be able to hit some big numbers for kind of cheap a little bit, depending on your hand size, because you can really churn through that deck really, really fast, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. Its second attack, for 1 Psychic and 2 colorless, Pulverizing Press does 140 damage. It's not affected by any effect on your opponent's active Pokemon, so for all you longtime players, it's basically a shred attack for 3 energies, 140 damage, which is always pretty good, I guess. You know, you see a Milk Tank in the active, or whatever it's called, milk tank. I think somebody called me out on it one time in a YouTube comment about how I say it and how I say it wrong. But those are the 2 cards that are in this. I'm actually really excited that these 2 cards are ones that come in battle decks, because then that means as well they'll be cheap. Usually, historically, cards that come in these battle decks are really cheap singles to buy online on websites like TCG Player, Troll and Toad, etc., etc. If you want to know what else comes in the EX decks, right, PokeBeach has laid it all out for you about what all is in it. A 1 ready-to-play 60-card deck. You get 3 reference cards, a rules booklet, a single-player playmat, damage counters, a metallic coin, a deck box, a quick guide to unlock strategies within, and then a code card that you can input in the Pokemon trading card game live. And again, you can right now get the Ampharos and Lucario EX decks from the Scarlet and Violet base set that just released, if you are interested in that. But we've got to talk about a little bit more about what's going on, especially, you know, maybe you want some stuff, but you want some free stuff. And let me tell you, you can get some free stuff this weekend. A free, what was the actual rarity term that I'd use? A special illustration rare, right, from Scarlet and Violet, the brand new set that released. And this was released on Pokemon's website. Pokemon.com released news that you can get Pokemon during the 2023 European International Championships stream. So on Twitch, or I think as well YouTube, I think you can watch it on YouTube as well. I'm actually not 100% sure, but if you watch the stream, I know they'll do it on Twitch, twitch.tv/PokemonTCG. If you watch the Twitch stream, there will be a code that appears on the screen, and on that code you can redeem it to get a Miraidon EX special illustration rare card free in your account. They do this very often. They've done this with a lot of supporters in the past, like Boss's Orders, Professor's Research. I think they did it with Marnie as well. And so this Miraidon EX being one of the hype cards of the set, right? One of the new hype cards that people are after. This is a really good opportunity for people to build those Miraidon decks or get things that you want, especially to bling out your deck too. This is the first time I think that they've given like a very super cool rarity. Like I would say this is the highest rarity of Miraidon EX that they give out. With the supporters, they never gave the rainbow rare supporters in the Sword and Shield era. So very, very cool. I love when Pokemon does this. Also, if you want to watch the VGC stream, because I know there might be some people that are interested in the VGC. I like watching the VGC myself. Sometimes in the tournaments that Pokemon produces on Pokemon's stream, you can get a free Palafin. This is Gavin Michaels' Palafin that you'll specifically receive. All trained, everything like that, ability, attacks, held items, stuff like that, to be able to put on your team, put in your collection, things of that nature. So yeah, you can add it to your competitive team too. And reminder that whether it's the Miraidon EX or the Palafin, whichever one you do, you can only get one each on your account. So one each save data for the VGC Palafin and one Miraidon EX card per TCG Live account. And maybe you get your Miraidon EX, right? Maybe you want to build a deck around it. Well, what are some of the good Pokemon TCG decks at this point right now? I saw this Justin Basil, Justin, we've talked about this so many times. I'm so sorry, Justin. They post a weekly meta update in terms of, you know, looking at the online events, things like that, looking at real life events as well, IRL, and looking and doing a scoring system of what's the top archetypes. So Justin posted earlier today at the time of this recording the weekly standard format chart, and this is how it goes, at least at this point right now. Lugia is in the league of its own. It's the best deck right now in terms of number of top 8 placements in the standard format in tournaments, online tournaments and things like that that have more than 50 participants, weighted based on the tournament size as well. Lugia has done the best so far in the opening weeks. Results from March 27th. So from March 27th to April 10th, Lugia has done the best. That is tier 0 according to Justin's analysis, math, things of that nature. In tier 1, you've got Lost Box, Mew VMAX, and Hisuian Gudra V-Star. Those are the 2, 3, and 4 decks right now in terms of the archetypes that are the best. And the best new deck, I would say, the best new deck to come out of Scarlet and Violet, and it is in its own at tier 2, but rounding out the top 5 is Gardevoir EX. Gardevoir EX, we'll talk a little bit about the deck later, but Gardevoir EX has been the best new deck in this format. But behind it, there are some other decks that maybe a lot of people are having a lot of fun with, especially this last one at number 8. Number 6, Giratina V-Star with Comfey. So basically, it's like a Lost Box version with Giratina V-Star, focusing on Giratina V-Star, really honing in on those attacks. Nailing the Pokemon with the big 280 attack, using the V-Star power to just delete a Pokemon in general. Regigigas in there at number 7. Old Reggie's probably the cheapest deck that you could build out of any of these, cheaper than Lost Box. Regigigas, very, very fun deck. People love playing that deck. I love playing the deck too. And number 8, Inteleon VMAX with Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX. This is a kind of a well, Inteleon VMAX never really hit the hay when it first came out. Urshifu VMAX has come and gone as a super dominant deck, and people are starting to have it come out of the woodworks again a little bit, especially with Urshifu VMAX running around. But I think the things that kind of gatekeep Urshifu VMAX a little bit are Gardevoir and Mew VMAX, because I feel like those decks always gatekeep it a little bit. But it can have it tricks up its own sleeve with Inteleon VMAX, you know, this Rapid Strike deck essentially at number 8, having the choice between attacking with Rapid Strike Urshifu VMAX or Inteleon VMAX. I know Doom, Senior Doom has been a big fan of this deck. I think, was it Celios Network? Somebody else I know was a big fan of the deck as well, at least like last week. When I was watching some streams and stuff, so and looking at Twitter accounts. So this right now is, I would say, is a pretty good statement of what some of the best decks are. I've seen a lot of people say don't be sleeping on Mew VMAX, right? Maybe Lugia's overhyped a little bit. I know Ethan Heggie was super big on Lost Box over in Japan because Ethan, you know, is in a quote unquote future format, you know, has more cards, you know, more rotations, things like that. And so Ethan said that Lost Box is probably the most dominant deck. And you can see right here just under Lugia V-Stars. So a very, very strong deck as well. No Miraidon or Regieleki in this, which I think is very, very interesting. And if you look at Limitless.com, play.limitless.com/decks, you can see the decks right now in the standard format with Scarlet and Violet, and you can look on here in the online tournaments of Limitless. In the tournaments that are registered, you can look at some of the top decks right now. Lost Box having the biggest meta share out of all the decks in the online tournaments, almost a 16% share, and Miraidon Regieleki being just under 10%. So very interesting to see, you know, how Miraidon Regieleki has, you know, the second best meta share out of all the decks right now in the standard format. But according to Justin's like little chart and little scoring system, it is not part of the top 8 archetypes that you can play right now. And I think a lot of that has to do, I'll move this over, is Miraidon and Regieleki's win percentage. So the win percentage right here, I've highlighted it. I've put my mouse over it for anyone watching on YouTube and Spotify video. Oh my gosh, sorry, you can't hear, but an advertisement just played in my ear and it was deafening. Anyways, so Miraidon Regieleki takes up a win share of 45.9%. That means in all the games that it's playing right now in the online tournaments on Limitless, it's winning less than 46% of its games. So that's a big reason why, you know, in my opinion, why in Justin's chart, Miraidon Regieleki isn't considered one of the top 8 decks in the format right now. And honestly, I mean, you look at Gardevoir, right? Gardevoir, 4th place overall. Gardevoir 4th place overall with less than a 9% meta share, and it's only winning 42% of the time. So it's even lower than Miraidon Regieleki. And let me just say, just in the beginning, this is very common with brand new fun decks that people are really excited about when they come out, because, you know, they're just playing with these cards the first time. People got to learn how to play the deck. People have to learn, you know, the tendencies of like the matchups as well, knowing how to play the matchups, but also, you know, is this even the best build? You know, are there some better cards that we can put on here evaluating the meta? So if you're a big Miraidon Regieleki fan, you're a big Gardevoir fan, do not worry right now. I don't think these decks are going to go away anytime soon. And there may be cards that we figure out that make these decks really, really good and on top of the meta. And who knows, maybe if Gardevoir stays way, way, way high and Lugia, right, becomes the #1 deck online again, maybe Gardevoir just stomps Lugia because Lugia doesn't have the amazing rares. Lugia doesn't have powerful energy, right? So Gardevoir can just rotate between Gardevoir EXs, things like that. Maybe Gardevoir plays a little bit of healing, you know, to be able to survive. Maybe Dialga Magnezone, a deck that I was talking about the other week. Maybe that just really pops off, right? And just takes a whole gainer and has a 60% win share. Who knows? That's how the meta develops at times. And that's just how the cookie crumbles. Sorry, I had to take a drink there. Now, with Lost Box, it has been winning a lot of tournaments as of late. As you can see at the time of this recording, the last three tournaments that it's really played in, it has had first, and first, having a 9-1-1 record, a 10-1-1 record, a 9-1 record, and an 11-0 perfect record, as well as plenty of other finishes that you can see on the site. I think probably a really good one to look at is Caleb Rogerson's list that that went on. Let me see if I can try to pull up Caleb's list right now to show you also Caleb's list of Lost Box. And I think I remember seeing this list on Twitter. I think this list is very, very cool because, you know, it sees the Lost Box engine that we've seen a ton. It's got the Comfey, it's got the Colress, it's got Cramorant, some Sableye in there, and some other regulars that we've seen, you know, in Turbo versions of the deck with Mirage Gate. You've got the Dragonite V, you've got Raikou, Drapion for your Mew matchup, Manaphy, Greninja, the typicals, I would say. But with the additions in Scarlet and Violet, it gains the Hawlucha. A new Hawlucha, if you do not know what this rare Pokemon is, it's a basic fighting Pokemon that says when you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may choose 2 of your opponent's bench Pokemon and put 1 damage counter on each of them. So the same way that kind of Zigzagoon was really good with, I think it was called Headbutt Tantrum, just placing it from your hand and putting it on your bench, putting a damage counter on a Pokemon. Hawlucha has kind of that same value, and whatever Pokemon really that you're attacking with, that can help you get some numbers. You know, if a Pokemon has 130 HP on your opponent's side of the field, a Hawlucha plus Sableye would knock it out, right? If your opponent's Pokemon has, you know, 260 HP, Dragonite can combo its 250 damage attack with Hawlucha, you know, just a good old 10 damage on it. That can hit a knockout. Raikou as well, even though it's 20 plus, I believe, and 20 for the damage Pokemon on both sides, that can hit some good numbers. That can help it reach over the top. You know, if one has an odd number like Genesect having 170, or no, is Genesect 180 or is Genesect 170? It can hit the odd numbers, right? Because Raikou moves in even numbers. That's the point that I'm trying to get at as of right now. So a lot of cool things in this list as well. There's also a Penny in here. Penny, a supporter that we haven't seen too often right now in the standard format. As you can see, kind of the chart here in terms of the prices. But Penny, a supporter, says put one of your basic Pokemon and all cards attached to it in your hand. So we've seen supporters like this in the past be really, really good. Longtime listeners may remember AZ, right? AZ was a supporter that allowed you to put any Pokemon on your field into your hand and all cards attached to it. And when your deck plays only basic Pokemon, like Lost Box does, Penny can be very, very good for this. It can allow you to move the Dragonite V out of play after it's taken a knockout. It can allow you to move the Raikou V if you start the Drapion, allow you to bring that into your hand as well. And also just really anybody. If you need to switch a Comfey, right, you can actually use it to switch the Comfey out into the next one or into the Dragonite. Things like that if you're already set up. So very, very cool in this list. This list also plays Beach Court. That's a new card included in a lot of these Lost Box decks. If you don't know what Beach Court is, the stadium, it says the retreat cost of each basic Pokemon in play, both you and your opponents, is 1 colorless energy less. And so, especially with your Comphase can free retreat. If you start Manaphy, it can free retreat. Radiant Greninja, Cramorant, Hawlucha, even the Raikou as well being a basic Pokemon. Raikou can also retreat. And so it gives you a lot of flexible options, especially because you're still trying to use a lot of flower selectings. You're still trying to use Colress Experiment, get those energies in the Lost Zone so then you can Lost Mine with Sableye, or you can Mirage Gate onto your Raikou, onto your Dragonite, onto your Greninja. I've also seen people actually use Mirage Gate for Drapion V when they feel like the 190 is very, very good, and so they put a couple energies on it, you know, and it's funny to watch that, but who knows, maybe that is actually the play, because Drapion just costs colorless energies. So that's what Lost Box is kind of looking like right now. I feel like Lost Box is definitely like the best deck right now, in my personal opinion, in my limited testing, because it is a deck that people are so familiar with, right, and has so many different options about what it can do and so many reactions that it can take. Yeah, it lost a lot of stuff like the amazing rares, right, the unlimited output in Rayquaza, or the hitting for weakness in the little baby Raikou, along with hitting something on the bench. But I think it's still very powerful. I think it's still very good, and it's going to be that way for a while. So be ready for that. If you're wondering what Lugia is, because I mentioned that Lugia lately, Lugia lost a lot of really, really good stuff. It lost the powerful energy, lost the Aurora energy for all its flexible hitters, things like that. So what does the Lugia box look like right now? We've got a list right here that recently won an event. If you do not know, Lugia has been paired up with Single Strike Tyranitar. That is kind of its #1 partner that I've been seeing in a lot of tournaments as of late, and a lot of streamers talk and build this deck. Lugia V-Star still putting out the Archeops on the field, but it has some new partners, one of them being Tyranitar V. This is specifically this Single Strike Dark type Tyranitar V. If you don't remember what it does, because I mean, I don't blame you if you do, it has 2 attacks. The first one is Cragalanche, hopefully I said that right, for 60 damage. It costs a dark, a colorless, and a colorless. This effect says discard the top 2 cards from your opponent's deck. So if your opponent is really milling through their deck right now, they're really just churning through that deck, setting up their board state, and they're not careful, you could maybe catch them off guard by using this attack to deck them out, right? One of the win conditions in the Pokemon trading card game is you lose if you can't draw a card at the beginning of your turn. Your deck is literally 0 at the start of your turn. So that is a win condition that Tyranitar V can go off of. But I think what a lot of people use it for is for the Single Strike Crush for 240 damage. This costs 2 dark energies and 2 colorless energies. It also has an effect, discard the top 4 cards of your deck. Hopefully you don't need it too much. Hopefully you don't have to use it a ton. But if you're wondering, right, 240, that doesn't seem like a great number. How does this Tyranitar 1 get all the energies on it, and 2 get enough power to really be knocking out Pokemon? Archeops, remember Archeops has Primal Turbo, getting 2 special energies and attaching them to one of your Pokemon. Well, it can Primal Turbo ability the Tyranitar V with Single Strike energies. Might be a while since you remember this card, or maybe you haven't heard this card. Maybe you're brand new to the game, therefore welcome. The Single Strike energy is a special energy card that can only be attached to Single Strike Pokemon. So Tyranitar V fits that. It checks off that box. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides dark and fighting energy, but only 1 energy at a time. So this can be the dark energy that is powered onto the Tyranitar V. The attacks of the Pokemon this card is attached to do 20 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So, just alone, if we use Primal Turbo to put 2 energies on the Tyranitar V, that is 280 damage. That knocks out the Gardevoir, right? I think the Gardevoir is at 280 damage or something like that. Maybe not, but you have 4 single strike energies, and through Summoning Star, Lugia V-Star, you can get up to 4 single strike energies at a time on this Tyranitar V, effectively putting it at 320 damage. That is a lot, and I mean a lot of damage on this Tyranitar. Another card that is being included in here is Radiant Gardevoir. So Radiant Gardevoir has the ability Loving Veil, I'm sorry. All of your Pokemon take 20 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon V. Pokemon V are very strong right now. Pokemon V are abundant in the Pokemon trading card game. So Radiant Gardevoir can kind of stall them out a little bit if you're facing the mirror match, if you're facing a Raikou V on your Lugia V-Star, right? Or maybe a Mew VMAX, because Mew VMAX is still very good, I would say, in the Pokemon trading card game. This can allow you to really modify some numbers and make it hard for your opponent to really just take knockouts. Stonejourner is in here too. It's your little single prize attacker, single strike Pokemon. Has Lance Pulse for 1 fighting, 1 colorless, 30 plus. If a stadium is in play, it does 30 more damage, 60 damage effectively, without the modifications of the single strike energy. And then Giga Hammer for 120 fighting, and colorless. And during the next turn, the Pokemon can't use Giga Hammer. So that can help you a little bit with the prize exchange, you know, trading one prizers or knocking out their RCSV with your Stonejourner or something of the sort, or any Pokemon that's weak to fighting. Cough Miraidon and Regieleki as well. You can get the single strike energies to really churn through your Tyranitars and Stonejourners with Urn of Vitality. It's an item card that shuffles up to 2 single strike energies from your discard pile into your deck and really help you out. There's a lot of different other special energies in here, like V-Guard Energy, Double Turbo, Gift Energy, and Regenerative Energy. This is an interesting card that I don't see a lot of, or haven't seen a lot of up to this point. If you don't know what Regenerative Energy is, it's a special energy. As long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides colorless energy. But what you want to do is you want to play it from your hand. When you play a Pokemon from your hand to evolve the Pokemon V this card is attached to, heal 100 damage from that Pokemon. So if you've got maybe you're going second and you get hit with like a Cramorant, right, in Lost Box. Cramorant's not going to knock you out. It's going to do 110 damage, but that puts your Lugia V at 110 HP left and your Lugia V-Star at 170 HP, which is way more manageable for Lost Box players. If you have a Regenerative Energy on this Lugia V and then you evolve it, you heal 100 damage off of that Lugia. So very, very cool card. It is very, very interesting to utilize in this deck. Very, very cool. And it also kind of fills up the requirements of the colorless energies, because, you know, your Stonejourner has a colorless energy. Your Tyranitar has 2 colorless energies in its attack cost. Archeops and Lugia V-Star are all colorless energies, so it gives you a little bit of flexibility as well. You know, just another special energy to slot a couple of, and in some situations can help you out a ton. So this is kind of where I've seen Lugia Archeops as of right now in the format. And the last one I think that I'm going to go over in the video in terms of decks that kind of what they look like and things like that. I think Gardevoir is a great one to talk about. So this person in this latest tournament won this tournament, playing a little bit different, I would say, of Gardevoir. And this is something that I've been curious about if people were going to do. So your main engine is Gardevoir EX and Kirlia. So Kirlia, let me tell you, stage 1, 80 HP psychic Pokemon, can be found through level ball and stuff and used with Rescue Carrier. It has the ability that I was talking about earlier. You may discard a card from your hand in order to use this ability. Once during your turn, you may draw 2 cards. So very, very good draw engine, right? If you have 4 Kirlias on the field, you can see the top 8 cards of your deck, and that's before you use a Judge. That's before you use a Roxanne, Professor's Research, you know, these kind of cards that allow you to see more cards in the Pokemon trading card game. You also have some other Pokemon as well that Kirlia can evolve into. A little baby Gardevoir. This one is one that I would include in the deck as well, and I think has become very, very pricey. Yeah, has really just surged up. Was $1, about $1.50 on March 18th, but now in USD it is $8.50 as of April 3rd. So quite bonkers in my opinion. But this Gardevoir is a stage 2. You can use the Kirlia's ability Refinement to draw cards and then evolve into Gardevoir and use its ability Shining Arcana. Once during your turn, you may look at the top 2 cards of your deck and attach any number of basic energy cards you find there to your Pokemon any way you'd like. Put the other cards into your hand. So, hypothetically, right, if you have 4 Kirlias like this deck does, right, I mentioned you could see 8 cards. If you evolve one of your Kirlia into a Gardevoir, you can see 10 cards off of abilities in that turn. That is so strong. That is so good. And that's why a lot of people are playing this deck. And that's why this deck has moved to the forefront, like we showed earlier in the top 5 decks kind of in the standard format according to Justin's chart and things like that. You could also evolve your Kirlia into a Gallade. This Gallade that this person was playing was actually one that I was very intrigued by, and if people were actually going to start playing it. It's got an ability called Buddy Catch. Once during your turn, you may search your card for a supporter, reveal it, and put it in your hand, then shuffle your deck. So very, very good. You know, you can draw Kirlia through Kirlia all day, but that doesn't mean you're going to see the exact cards that you want. And so let's say maybe you're really digging for the Roxanne, right? It's late in the game. You've your opponent only has like 2 prizes left. Maybe you've got 4. You want to try to find that Roxanne. So you use Buddy Catch to grab the Roxanne, and you take your opponent's 6 card hand, 7 card hand, and make it a 2 card hand while also drawing cards for you as well. So you could do a combo, right? You could Buddy Catch to start your turn, use Roxanne, draw 6 cards, and then use your Kirlia Refinements to see up to 6 more cards, right? Effectively seeing 12 cards in that turn. And that's before we're even talking about Radiant Greninja and stuff like that. So very, very insane of the stuff that you can do in this. This also includes a card though that I think is pretty low key, and I think a lot of people are trying out on the scene. Banette EX. This stage 1 Pokemon that evolves from Shuppet has 2 attacks. 1 Psychic Energy, Everlasting Darkness for 30 damage. During your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. We saw how strong Vikavolt V was for a while with Item Lock, and so Banette EX has the potential to do that same thing. But Banette EX also has the opportunity to be a heavy hitter with Poltergeist. Its second attack, doing 60 times damage for a Psychic and Colorless. Your opponent reveals their hand. This attack does 60 damage for each trainer card you find in there. People that remember Gengar Mimikyu Tag Team EX, that Poltergeist attack was so strong. It was so good. It infuriated a lot of people. I mean, its GX attack or power or whatever was also very strong, and that's what made it really, really strong as well. But anyways, very, very good, I would say. And you know, you may see the Zacian V in here, the Psychic one that requires 3 energies to attack. You may see the Gardevoirs that require 3 energies. Gallade takes 3 energies. Banette takes 2 energies. And you're like, Jake, how are you going to power up all of these Pokemon? And it's the face of the deck, Gardevoir EX. So Gardevoir EX, a 310 HP Psychic Stage 2 Pokemon, still has to evolve from one of those Kirlias or a rare candy from Ralts, right? Has the ability Psychic Embrace. As often as you'd like during your turn, you may attach a basic Psychic Energy card from your discard pile to one of your Psychic Pokemon. If you attach energy to a Pokemon in this way, put 2 damage counters on that Pokemon. You can't use this ability on a Pokemon that would be knocked out. So with Psychic Embrace, you can power up, right, your Gardevoir for Brainwave. You can use Swirling Slice. You can use Poltergeist. You can use Storm Slash on the Zacian. You can even use Gardevoir's attack for 190 damage on the EX. 190 damage. This attack recovers from, or this Pokemon recovers from all special conditions. To have a flexible amount of attackers on your field. And when you have the Refinement Kirlia to discard 1 card from your hand, draw 2, and also Greninja that specifically discards energy, you can discard energy really fast in this deck, and it can be very powerful, especially when you're playing cards like Research in there, Ultra Ball to also be able to discard cards in your deck. And one of the cool things that you can also use in this deck with Banette EX, you know, you may have heard Poltergeist and be like, how am I going to know if my opponent has a bunch of trainer cards in their hands to take a big, huge knockout? One of the cards that I just showcased on the YouTube and Spotify video that some people may have caught on to is Acerola's Premonition. Acerola's Premonition is a supporter card saying your opponent reveals their hand and you draw a card for each trainer card you find in there. I think that this is more used for the first part rather than the second part. Yes, it can be a very cool draw supporter as well. Trainer cards are very prominent in the Pokemon trading card game, are very good. People play a lot of them all the time in decks, but this card also secures that, oh, maybe it's a good idea to use Banette in here, or maybe it's better to use Zacian or whatever. If you know that if you see your opponent's hand through Acerola's Premonition and you see, oh, there's 4 trainer cards in there, right? That's 240 damage from this Banette EX. That can go take a knockout on little Pokemon Vs and things like that, instead of putting just a ton of damage counters on your Zacian V for Storm Slash, because Storm Slash does more damage for each psychic energy attached to the Pokemon, 60 plus 30 for each energy. And so it may take a little bit more to be able to hit the big numbers on Zacian, but maybe it's effectively better to use Banette EX. There's a 2/2 line in here, so very strong card. I would say also has Sky Sealstone. If you do not know what Sky Sealstone is, it grants a Pokemon V a V-Star power, specifically probably the only V in your deck, Zacian V, that has an unlimited damage output. Sky Sealstone says, during your turn, you may use this ability. During this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon V-Star or active Pokemon V Max is knocked out by damage from an attack from your basic Pokemon V, take 1 more prize card. So Zacian V hitting into a Duraludon V Max can take 4 prizes in 1 knockout. Knocking out a Mew V Max, take 4 prizes. Knocking out an Arceus V-Star, take 3 prizes on there. So very strong, very cool as well. So definitely, in my opinion, those are some of the cool decks that you should check out right now. If you're playing the Pokemon trading card game, those are some of the ones that you should play, and how you can build them as well, and how things have maybe changed. And we'll have a lot more to talk about in terms of decks and stuff once we get to next week's episode and the European International Championships have finished, because guess what? This is just online tournaments and stuff. This isn't the closed deck lists that people have. This isn't the ultimate spice that someone has cooked up for this tournament, the absolute great meta call that nobody expected. And you know what? We're going to talk about that in next week's episode. And I believe next week Sean will also be here too. Please, Sean, enjoy your trip in Japan, Sean, if you're listening to this, but come home, please. I miss you, and probably so do the listeners. But Sean will continue posting on our Twitter page. If you have not seen, last week, there was some posts that he made as well, including the card that we might burn this year. So if you want to see what the card is that we burn this year over on our Twitter, you can go check us out at MetaPodTCG over on Twitter. Sean will probably have some more posts about being in Japan and having fun with people, so make sure to go check us out for that to see the exclusive look that you're not going to see on any other podcast. I'm Jake, Sean is over here, and we hope that you enjoyed revolving around the evolving meta. See you later.